Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. Speaking of the road, I'm just getting done with about a 7-week road trip and went up through Iowa, clear down through Texas. Now I'm in the middle of Arkansas, going east back to Tennessee. In case you're wondering where I'm at with all this beautiful scenery. So I've learned several things, about teaching, and the more I interact with people and give private lessons, and I gave 2 big group lessons on the trip of like 12 to 15 people. I learn things each time I do that, because sometimes it's more the way you think about different aspects of the game. It's more of a philosophy that I can pass on that will really help. I think I'm going to tell you a couple things in this video that'll definitely help you with your game without any major overhauls, just mentally. Because the mental game must be practiced, but you can't have the mental without the physical. So the mental must be practiced with the physical. And I think that's where some players need a little bit of encouragement to think about things a little bit differently. One thing that's come up is, do you look at the cue ball or the object ball last before you shoot a shot? There's different opinions. There's some pros that say they look at the cue ball last. I would be careful to define specifically what last means, because, well, I'll just give you an example. The way that I do it is, my philosophy is the primary target is the cue ball. Nobody can argue with that. If you don't hit the cue ball where you want to, the object ball isn't going to go where you want it to. So I try to combine those two things as much as I can. And you only have so good of eyesight, so good of feel, so good of hearing. But one thing I've noticed in life, if I turn one of my senses down, the other ones will raise up a little bit. Like if suddenly the lights went out right now, immediately we would all have a better sense of feel, because wherever you're at, you would reach out probably and get a reference so that you didn't bump into anything. And then from your memory and that reference, you'll probably be able to get to the door or get to the fuse box or whatever needs to be done. But you have to have a reference to do that. And I do something similar in my pool shots. When I'm above the ball looking at the shots, that's really where I'm doing all the calculating. And I do that calculation from a position that's exactly center to center from the cue ball to the object ball, like they're glued together. I want to really create a situation where they're one mass because of how I'm lined up on it. Most people stand a little farther to the left if they're right-handed, and they're really not connecting the balls into one mass. Maybe if the balls are closer together, they might get that feeling, but definitely not when they're far apart. So when I'm above the shot, I'm about 80% visual. The other 20% is, I feel my balance, I feel my body centered. I'm kind of anticipating the sound of the balls, but for the most part, I'm 80% visual, lining up the shots center to center, and then creating a triangular dynamic by standing straight. I look at where the shot line would be. And again, I do this subconsciously. I'm just explaining so that you can start doing these parts that I'm outlining, and then it'll become subconscious for you as well. So I'm triangulating my aiming, and that's the most accurate way to shoot anything. I know a military science expert and watched one of his videos, and he said he could hit a target about the size of a pool table from 22 miles away. But he said the only way that he can do that is he has to have a reference so that he can triangulate the aiming procedure, even with the most advanced computers. So in the daytime, he uses the sun, and he prefers to make the shot, depending on the time of year, between 11 a.m. and 3. He wants the sun as much overhead as possible, because he's going to train in on that sun location, and then the computer's going to use that and triangulate the angle to make the shot that's 22 feet or 22 miles away. In the nighttime, he uses the North Star and uses it as the reference, then triangulates. What I'm doing in pool is, of course, much smaller version, but instead of training on the sun, on the lower angled shots, I'm training center to center, and then using that reference to create the angle. If it's a half a ball angle or more, I switch from the center as the reference to the edge. So the edge would be like the North Star at night. I'm going to use the sun, the center, for lower angled shots. A half a ball or thinner, I'm going to train on the center to the edge, and then create one of the other 4 angles. I'm just using 4 angles off center and 4 angles off edge as far as my main cue angles. And I'll get into that in some of my videos. I've talked about how I prepare the angle of the shot while I'm standing above the ball. And that's something that it's easier to do if I got a pool cue in my hand. And I'll get into that in more detail and how to create those angles before you go down. Because what most people are doing is they're using one angle, like a straight in shot angle, and then they're using that same cue angle and trying to apply it to all the different shots that come up in pool, all the different angles. But they're not triangulating. With one line, you can't triangulate. So instead of using one line and applying it to, like 8 different major angles, I'm standing center to center and then allowing my cue to rotate, which will happen naturally, into the angle. But what I do above the ball is I create that angle first. So if you just look at my hand and think about if I had a cue in my hand and I wanted to cut a ball to the right, I could just move it a little bit this way, just rotate the cue a little bit, and that's going to give me an angle to cut the ball to the right. If I want to cut the ball to the left, I would angle it this way slightly. And you get a feel for that. And then I can show you some other things that help you get the exact reference. But shot making is more feel and touch than it is visual, because like I said, 80% visual above the ball when I'm doing these calculations. But when I come down on the ball, see, since I'm lined up center to center and my subconscious knows exactly where that object ball is, when I go down, I put my main focus on the cue ball because it's the primary target. It's the one that I have to hit really exact. Plus, if I want to get a margin of error, I have to do it at the cue ball. I can't do it at the object ball. If anybody tells you that they're creating more margin of error without doing it at the cue ball, they're getting over on you, because it's not possible, because the only thing physical that you touch is the cue ball. Now you can use references, like the diamonds can be a reference, and different parts of the table can be a reference, but what I'm talking about is the actual physical reference that you get is at the cue ball. And so I'm going to tell you what I do when I'm angling a shot is if I'm cutting a ball to the right, what I do is I angle the stick to the left, and then when I drop down, I go a hair to the right, a touch of inside. So it'd be a touch to the right. A touch is a feeling, but it's also a measurement. A touch is like a hair. So really, it's not very much at all. The important thing is the angle of the cue. Because if I go down on a shot and cue it slightly, let's say to the right, and stay trained on the center of the ball like I'm shooting a straight-in shot, to do that, I have to angle the cue to the left slightly. So if I went ahead and just hit that shot, I would cut the ball to the right slightly, because it's the angle of the cue more than where you're cueing the cue ball, unless you're spinning the ball and curving it or deflecting it. But I'm just talking about pure angles, pure shot making. So when I'm cutting a ball to the right, let's say I'm cutting a ball just a hair to the right, I shoot them like they're straight in, but what I do is I go down, I angle the stick to the left, and I go slightly to the inside, which is the right of the cue ball, and when I hit it, it cuts slightly to the right. If I want to cut it more to the right, I go down, angle my stick to the left, and go a slightly farther over to the right. And there again, I let my subconscious do it, because really it's the angle, and then once I'm down into that position, I can just aim straight down the cue stick at whatever I want to. I can aim at a part of the ball, which I don't do. What I'm conscious of doing, as far as, like I said, maximizing my senses, is 80% above the ball, but once I drop down and my hand touches that table, it inverts to 80% feel, touch, and a little bit of sound. I like to hear the ball hit the pocket in a certain way. That's why I always like the Gold Crown 1s and 2s. You remember that sound they made? It's different than on these diamonds. They kind of mask the sound, which I've talked to a lot of players, and we just don't like that as well, because you don't get that sensation of really making that pocket. It's just a really good sound. It's fulfilling. So if I'm cutting a ball to the left, I go down. First I go center to center. If I'm going to cut a little bit to the left, I go down, I alter the tip to the right, and I go slightly to the left of center. That angles the stick slightly so that when I hit it like it's straight in, now I'm not trying to hit it straight in, I'm just more aware of the object ball. I don't want to look at anything really specific about it, even though when I'm cutting a ball to the right, I am looking at the left side of the ball, but no particular spot. Sometimes I use the quarter of the object ball, but you know, those are more like specialty shots, especially if I'm real close to the balls. I have to use a quarter sometimes to create the right angle. You don't have as much flexibility when you're real close to the ball. The farther you are away, the more your peripheral vision, so I can actually stand center to center on a shot that's like 8 feet away and still go down and aim at the edge and hit the very edge. As a matter of fact, that's one of my tricks to being able to cut balls as well as I did. When I was in my prime, that was one of my specialties, is long shots, especially long cut shots. I would line up center to center, but when I drop down, I aim the center at the edge, and what I noticed is I can try to cut the ball as thin as I want, or as thin as I can, and I'm very unlikely to miss the whole ball. What usually happens is I hit it too thin, but it's still a good hit, and a lot of times I get safe by doing that. So, you know, that's just something you can experiment with. That's a little bit more advanced. But getting back to cutting a ball to the left, I go down, rotate the tip slightly to the right. And what I was saying before is, what I do, once you get the hang of this, I'll show you how you can create that angle before you go down. So let's just talk in those terms, because I can do it both ways, but when I'm playing my best, especially under a lot of pressure, I like to preset the angle perfectly before I go down to the shot. So I've got a kind of a check and a balance. I'm not just aiming the shot, but I'm aiming the shot with a perfectly designed angle of the cue. I can do that, and you can do that. It's just a matter of understanding how to practice it. So anyway, when I'm cutting balls, it's the same thing. If I'm cutting ball to the right, I angle the stick slightly to the left, or go down and angle it to the left, whenever you want to do it. But if you pre-do it, you know, you just go slightly to the left, and then when you go down, you go slightly inside, which is to the right of center, just a hair, and aim at the edge of the ball. All cut shots, I'm aiming at the edge of the ball. I'm just doing it with really 4 angles. One is straight, like a straight in centered edge shot, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, and they're slight angles, and you can feel it in your hand. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, the physical attachment is just with your hands, and the physical target is just the cue ball. But to get to the level of a champion player, you have to understand how to maximize these things. So that's a pretty good start for you. I would focus on that, And if you don't make a shot in practice, set it up again immediately. Angle your stick appropriately. If you undercut it, angle it more. If you overcut it, angle it less. If you undercut it, angle it more. It's as simple as that. And then this next video, I'll get into the mental side of practicing and how to establish those angles and elevate your mental game, which is mostly confidence, but you can elevate your mental game at the same time. And these little negative rolls and stuff like that won't ever bother you again, because it's more the state of mind. I go down on every shot as if I've already made it, and if I don't make the shot, I only tried to learn from it. So I have done that for years and years, and that's really the secret to having a good mental attitude. Anyway, this is CJ. If you want to know more of my fundamentals, systems, and techniques on the pool table, join me at masteringpocketbilliards.com. Till next time, this is CJ. Talk with you soon.